أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين، فإن كن نساء فوق 2 فلهن ثلثا ما ترك، وإن كانت واحدة فلها النصف، ولأبويه لكل واحد منهما السدس مما ترك إن كان له ولد، فإن لم يكن له ولد وورثه أبواه فلأمه الثلث، فإن كان له إخوة فلأمه السدس من بعد وصية يوصي بها أو دين. آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا، فريضة من الله، إن الله كان عليما حكيما. ولكم نصف ما ترك أزواجكم إن لم يكن لهن ولد، فإن كان لهن ولد فلكم الربع مما تركن من بعد وصية يوصين بها أو دين، ولهن الربع مما تركتم إن لم يكن لكم ولد، فإن كان لكم ولد فلهن الثمن مما تركتم من بعد وصية توصون بها أو دين. وإن كان رجل يورث كلالة أو امرأة وله أخ أو أخت فلكل واحد منهما السدس، فإن كانوا أكثر من ذلك فهم شركاء في الثلث من بعد وصية يوصى بها أو دين غير مضار، وصية من الله، والله عليم حليم. تلك حدود الله، ومن يطع الله ورسوله يدخله جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها، وذلك الفوز العظيم. ومن يعص الله ورسوله ويتعد حدوده يدخله نارا خالدا فيها وله عذاب مهين. يستفتونك قل الله يفتيكم في الكلالة، إن امرؤ هلك ليس له ولد وله أخت فلها نصف ما ترك وهو يرثها إن لم يكن لها ولد، فإن كانت 2 فلهما الثلثان مما ترك، وإن كانوا إخوة رجالا ونساء فللذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين، يبين الله لكم أن تضلوا، والله بكل شيء عليم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today, inshallah, we have a topic prepared, so it's easier for everybody. And the topic, inshallah, we'd like to start our discussion in is that of inheritance, wills. And what we'll do, inshallah, we'll speak more in lines of the importance of what Islamic will, the importance of inheritance, the awareness, certain misconceptions in the distribution of the estate, certain malpractices, and like that. We will not go into the actual calculation. We need a kind of classroom environment for that with a projector. So we're not going to the actual calculations, right? But still, these sessions would be very beneficial as it will bring any awareness, right? So we'll start with the importance of inheritance, right? And after the session, we would see how important inheritance is. And within the class, inshallah, within the session, as we mentioned, you could ask questions and keep it interactive. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم العلم ثلاثة. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam in a hadith he mentions the ilm and the knowledge of Sharia is of what? 3 categories. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he categorized the ilm and the knowledge of what? Sharia into what? 3 categories. And he mentioned ayatun muhkama, sunnatun qa'ima, aw faridatun adila. The first category is those what? Ayat muhkama, clear-cut ayats, clear verses, that what there's no ambiguity in that. These are clear verses of the Quran. Sunnatun qa'ima, the second category, that is what? Established sunnah, the established practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the third category he mentioned, faridatun adila, the fair share, which refers to what? Inheritance. And then he mentions وَمَا كَانَ سِوَى ذَلِكَ فَهُوَ فَضْلٌ. And afterward, beside these 1, 2, 3 categories, everything else is extra zaid. Is extra, is regarded as extra. So if you look at this hadith, we see that Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he placed what? The ilm and the knowledge of what? Inheritance as 1/3 of deen, 1/3 of the knowledge of Islam. So it shows the importance. Another hadith, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentions تَعَلَّمُوا الْفَرَائِضْ وَعَلِّمُوهَا النَّاسِ فَإِنَّهَا نِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned تَعَلَّمُوا الْفَرَائِضْ, learn inheritance, the laws of inheritance, وَعَلِّمُوهَا النَّاسِ, and teach it to people. فَإِنَّهَا نِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ, for certainly it is half of knowledge. In the second hadith we see what? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that what? The ilm and the knowledge of inheritance in Islam is half of knowledge. And obviously, if you look at what is the knowledge of inheritance, is not vast, it is limited. So it is not actually 1/3 nor 1/2 of knowledge, but 1/3 and 1/2 is mentioned here to show what? The importance, right? The importance of mirath, the importance of the knowledge of inheritance. And what about the ruling, the legal ruling of inheritance? We understand, okay, in Salah, what is the legal ruling of what? Salah, 5-time daily Salah. No one has any objection. They will mention straight out, it is compulsory, mandatory upon every mature Muslim to perform 5-time Salah daily. What is the ruling of what? Zakah. What is the ruling of Hajj? We have no difference of opinion amongst even what? The normal people, right? But what about inheritance? The implication to implement the laws of inheritance in Islam. What is the ruling? That is also compulsory. That is not something that is mustahab or recommended if we feel to do it, if the need arise. No, this is something mandatory to implement the laws of inheritance in Islam. And there's no difference of opinion with regards to that. There's no difference of opinion with regards to what? The mandatory, with regards to what? The implementation of the laws of inheritance being mandatory, being obligatory. And its compulsion is not what? The saying of this, a particular individual, a particular imam. No, this compulsion is derived directly from what? The Quran and the Sunnah, the authentic traditions of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And being established in the Quran, clear-cut. We spoke about what? Ayatun muhkama, clear-cut ayats, clear-cut verses. Is established, the laws of inheritance established by these what? Clear-cut verses. Was sunnatun qa'ima, established what? Practice and sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So if such a ruling is established by Quran and sunnah and is considered what? Mandatory, then what? If a person, if he were to negate its compulsion, then what is the ruling? If a person were to negate the compulsion of Islamic inheritance, and he says, you don't have to do Islamic inheritance, you don't have to follow Islamic inheritance, you can do your own will, you can distribute how you want to distribute, then khalas, if a person negates its compulsion, then that person becomes an apostate. We're not speaking about a person who didn't share the estate according to the laws of the Sharia. No, a person who didn't do that, yes, whatever you want to call him, a fasiq, a fajr, a person who will transgress the bounds set by Allah Azza wa Jal, but he remains in the fold of Islam. But here we're speaking about a person who negates the compulsion of Islamic inheritance. That is not something that is obligatory, that is not something that is mandatory. He negates its compulsion after proof and evidence has been presented to that person. Despite that, he denies the compulsion, you don't have to do it like that. Then that person becomes an apostate. Why? Because he negates these clear-cut verses of the Quran. He negates the clear-cut verses of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we look here, we would see the importance of inheritance again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has He has sent the Quran, and He has sent Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to explain to us what Allah Azza wa Jal has revealed to us in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, establish salah. Where in the Quran the amount of raka'at we perform is mentioned in the Quran. Where in the we just perform Salat al-Maghrib. Where in the Quran Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned Salat al-Maghrib? Or Salat al-Maghrib is 3 raka'at, and how to perform these 3 raka'at. There's no way in the Quran mentioned that. Allah Azza wa Jal, what He mentioned, Aqimus Salah, establish His Salah. But if we look at the Sunnah of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, we would see how to perform Salah. He taught us how to perform Salah. He explained to us how to perform Salah. Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Perform Salah just like how you see me perform Salah. He taught the Sahaba how to perform Salah. Wa atu zakah. This is the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. Where in the Quran Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned 2.5%. Where we get 2.5% from? 1/40th of a person's wealth. How does that person reach the nisab? What is the nisab? All of these things are mentioned by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam. He explained that. Allah Azza wa Jal commands zakah, how we give zakah, how much, when will that person give zakah, the passing of 1 year, all of these things not mentioned in the Quran. And we can continue. ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ, and complete your fasting until until night time, the hukm of fasting. Man shahida minkum ash-shahra falyasum. That person who witnessed the month of Ramadan, and he has to fast. The laws of fasting, where are the laws of fasting found? In the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, وَلْيَطَوَّفُ بِالْبَيْتِ الْعَتِيقِ. When Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about Hajj, and all these aspects, where in the Quran mentioned how much time a person makes tawaf, and the actual performance of Hajj. And these are the pillars of Islam. These are the pillars of Islam, and despite that, it is mentioned vague in the Quran. But its explanation comes from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But for the laws of inheritance, the laws of inheritance, Allah Azza wa Jal took it upon Himself to mention who are the heirs of the deceased. When a person dies, who would inherit from him? You're not going to find that You don't need to look at the hadith. Generally, it is mentioned in the Quran, the heirs of that deceased. Who is going to inherit from that person when he dies? That is mentioned in the Quran. Not only that, the share of each deceased, not each deceased, each heir of the deceased, his or her share is mentioned explicitly in the Quran. Explicitly in the Quran, the share of each and every heir is mentioned in the Quran. This shows the importance of inheritance. Allah Azza wa Jal, all of us want to be successful, but understand success lies in the obedience of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, after mentioning what? The verse of inheritance, He mentioned tilka hududullah, and this is what the boundary set by Allah Azza wa Jal. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يُدْخِلْهُ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا وَذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. A person who obeys Allah Azza wa Jal generally, but more so, a person who obeys Allah Azza wa Jal with regards to the laws of inheritance. Allah Azza wa Jal has prepared for him what Jannah, beneath which what garden flows, and khalas, ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. And this is ultimate success. Following the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal. We want to be successful, then Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned this is success. This is success. So we as Muslims, we act upon what? The laws of Allah Azza wa Jal. That is what makes you and I Muslim. What makes me a Muslim? What makes you a Muslim? What makes a person a Muslim? Not his name, not his clothes. His i'tiqad, his belief in Allah Azza wa Jal and his actions. And we as Muslims, we act upon what? Each and every command of Allah Azza wa Jal. So the command of inheritance, the laws of inheritance is equally as important as the laws of any other law of Allah Azza wa Jal. Salah, zakah, fasting. And not only what? We act upon it, but listen, we act upon it, we submit ourselves. This is the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. Sami'na wa ata'na. This is what we do. It's not because, okay, we have a choice, so we have a choice but to follow it. No, not like that. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثم لا يجدون في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. A believer, what? Not only he accept the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal, the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal, but he submit himself to it, and he is pleased. And he is pleased with what? With what? Allah Azza wa Jal as his Rabb, and he is pleased to what? Submit himself to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any what? Hesitation. And negligence to the laws of what? Inheritance. Allah Azza wa Jal, after mentioning what? The laws of inheritance, He mentioned, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودًا يُدْخِلْهُ نَارًا خَالِدًا فِيهَا وَلَهُ عَذَابٌ مُبِينٌ. And that person who disobeys Allah Azza wa Jal, disobeys His Rasul with regard to the laws of inheritance, وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودًا, and that person he transgresses the boundaries set by Allah Azza wa Jal with regards to inheritance, يُدْخِلْهُ نَارًا خَالِدًا. Allah Azza wa Jal would enter him into the fire, خَالِدًا, forever. وَلَهُ عَذَابٌ مُهِينًا. And for him is a disgraceful punishment. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions in a hadith, a person what? His failure to adhere to the laws of inheritance may result in that person what? Deprivation of his inheritance in Jannah. Nabi alayhi salam mentioned, Man qata'a mirathan faradahu Allah wa rasuluhu qata'a Allah bihi mirathan min al-Jannah. That person who what? Cuts off the inheritance of an heir in this world, meaning he deprives an heir of his right share or of his what? His or her share of inheritance in this world. Allah Azza wa Jalla will cut off his inheritance from Jannah. Meaning that Allah Azza wa Jalla will deprive that person of entrance into Jannah, just like how He deprived that person of his fair share. And the ayats of what? Right? The ayats pertaining to inheritance, clear in the Quran. You'll find in Surah An-Nisa. I'm going to show you all the ayats, right? So understand the concept of wealth, right? Normally what? Understand it's easy for a person to sit and to make dhikr, to recite Quran, to perform Hajj, to perform Nafil Salah. He can do that very easily. But to part with wealth, not to part with wealth, the tens of thousands, by the millions, to part with that sometimes with what? It is difficult on a person. It becomes difficult on a person. But if you understand the concept of wealth, Allah Azza wa Jal, wealth belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal. وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. For Allah Azza wa Jal is whatever in the heavens and the earth, every single thing belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the wealth that He has given us is a trust, is an amana. If I lend you something that does not belong to you, it is a trust, is an amana, and you can only use that based on whatever guidelines I give you, right? I give you my car to use or something to use. Listen, use it like this. Don't use it like that. I am the owner of it. I can tell you that, right? So Allah Azza wa Jal, that wealth that He has given us is a trust. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He instructs us clearly how to use our wealth. And if we look at the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, a person will spend his entire life on the face of the earth, 60, 70, 80 years. And watch how much things he would do on the face of the earth. But when that person dies, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentioned, لا تزول قدم عبد يوم القيامة حتى يسأل عن أربعة. That person, his feet would not be able to move the slightest on the day of judgment until he is asked what? 4 questions. And from the questions that person will be asked, these have to be very important questions. 4 questions, 70, 80 years of living on the face of the earth. And 4 questions have to be what? Very, very important question. And from the question, an malihi min ayna iktasaba. And mali, how did that person acquire his wealth? How did you acquire your wealth? And not only that, the next question, right? The next question also connected to the wealth of that person. وَفِيمَا أَنْفَقَ. How did he spend that wealth? So a person, he would have to give an account of how did you acquire that wealth? Was it through what halal means or haram means? And how did you spend that wealth? Did you spend that wealth in a way pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jal? Every person would have to what? Answer. And if a person, with regards to what? We understand consuming what? A person should not consume what? Haram. Right? So we go in the grocery and we're looking at what? The ingredients. No gelatin, good, right? So we're looking at khalas. It's permissible to eat. Looking at the chicken that we buy is halal, whatever. That is very good, right? But a person, understand, if a person, he steals money and he takes that stolen money that belongs to somebody else and he purchases what? Halal chicken. Would that be halal for him? No. He can purchase everything that is written in it halal, but for him that is haram. Why? Because the source of income is haram. So whatever he does with that money, it becomes what? Haram. And a person, if he is being nourished by haram and he consumes haram, then what effect it has upon that person? That person, his ibadat would not be accepted. His ibadat would not be accepted. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentions an incident of a person. That person, yutilu safar, ash'af aghbar. That person is on a journey, a long journey. Ash'af aghbar, disheveled, covered in what? Dust. Yamuddu yadayhi ila sama. That person what? Stretches his hands towards the heavens. And who he is calling? None except Allah Azza wa Jal. Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. He is calling towards Allah Azza wa Jal. But Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam is mentioning, وَمَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَشْرَبُهُ حَرَامٌ. That person, what he eats is haram. What he drinks is haram. وَغُذِيَ بِالْحَرَامِ. That person is being what? Nourished by haram. فَأَنَّا يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. How it is that person, his dua could be accepted. Meaning mustahil, that person, what his ibadat would not be accepted. Even though he is what? Mukhlis, calling towards Allah Azza wa Jal. Mat'amuhu haram, wa sharabuhu haram, wa ghudhiya bil haram. What he eats is from haram, what he drinks is from haram, what he nourishes his body from is haram. And that person, he didn't eat pork? No. The earnings of that person. So once a person is earnings is what? Unlawful, whatever he intakes, whatever he consumes, it becomes haram. وَأَنَّ يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned, and how is it that that person, his dua, his ibadah could be accepted? It would not be accepted. So people, we understand that. But a person, how all this comes into play. If a person, he consumes the inheritance of somebody else, he does not give that individual his fair share, and he withholds that, and he consumes that, then that person, what he is doing, he is consuming any haram. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ أَمْوَالَ الْيَتَامَى ظُلْمًا إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ نَارًا وَسَيَصْلَوْنَ سَعِيرًا. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, those who eat the wealth of the orphans. The father died, so khalas, the children young. So the estate of the father is in the hands of what? This one and that one. And it should only be as a trust, but what? When they take it wrongfully and they try to justify their wrong and they consume what? The wealth that doesn't belong to them. What actually they are consuming? Allah Azza wa Jal, إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ نَارًا. They are only what? Consuming in their bellies the fire of Jahannam. وَسَيَصْلَوْنَ سَعِيرًا. And they will blaze therein. So those who would acquire inheritance unjustly, those people are indeed consuming haram. They are consuming any haram. And Allah Azza wa Jal is what? The sole legislator. Type inil hukmu illa lillah. Allah is the legislator. He legislates. No one else legislates beside Allah Azza wa Jal. So it is not upon a person, listen, I will divide the estate of my father based on what? The law of the land. The law of the land is not what? That means nothing. If it goes against what the Sharia, it goes against what the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal, it means nothing. It means nothing. So it is totally wrong to divide the estate based on the laws of the land. We divide the estate based on the laws of the Sharia. Allah Azza wa Jal, He is the only one that has what rights to legislate. We cannot legislate. Even a mufti, even a scholar, he cannot legislate. As we mentioned earlier, the role of an alim, the role of a scholar is not to legislate. He cannot legislate. His law, his rule, his what? Wadhifa, his role is to explain to the what? To the mass, explain to the people what Allah Azza wa Jal has legislated. That is his role. But sometimes, because I understand why people what? We're not saying that you cannot go to the court at all. Yes, at times a person may have no choice but to resort to the court. Why? Because if what? There are certain heirs, they don't want to distribute the estate. For example, a person is what? A legitimate heir, a legal heir that could inherit, but he's been deprived of his share, whether it be what totally or partially. He's been deprived of his share from the estate, and he has no means except to go by what? Go to the court. Right? So khalas, he can go to the court. Why? Because this is where he's getting his haqq and his rights. Except that what? After going to the court, he can only claim what Allah Azza wa Jal has legislated. So if his share, for example, is just what? 1/4, and he goes to the court and the court gives him a half of the estate, no. The other quarter, return it to the estate. Return it to the other heirs. Your rightful what? Amount is just 1/4. And understand, even what? We're not speaking about just kuffar court, no. Even in a Shari'i court, if you bring false evidence, right, in a Shari'i court, Islamic state, right, in front of the Qadi, a person brings false evidence, and the Qadi, the Islamic judge, rules on his favor, on his behalf, that does not change the laws of the Sharia. We can't say, well, this is the judge, he ruled that, right? People what? They take other people's land. I have my papers, this is my papers you have. You cannot take anybody's land and say this is according to the court, the law of the land is yours. No. Understand? Something can be somebody else's one, and in Trinidad, in any place, you can get papers, this, that, what, to prove that that is yours. And I have my papers, you know, I have my lawyer papers. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't what? Transfer any ownership. So our responsibility as Nabi alayhi salam, he mentioned, تَعَلَّمُوا الْفَرَائِضِ وَعَلِّمُوهَا النَّاسِ. Learn the laws of inheritance and what, teach it to the people. That is our thing, right? Because Nabi alayhi salam mentioned that a time would come, al-ilmu sayuqbad, that knowledge would be taken away from the people. وَتَظْهَرَ الْفِتَنِ, and fitna and corruption would what? Would be widespread and apparent. Until the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, حَتَّى يَخْتَلِفْ إِثْنَانِ في فريضة لا يجدان أحدا يفصل بينهما. Such a time that khalas, ilm would be taken, jahl and ignorance would prevail. So much so that he would not find what? An individual that could what? Share or calculate or distribute what? The inheritance properly. Alright, they would have difference of opinion and this and that, khalas. And they would yakhtalif, they would disagree. Because they don't have what? Knowledge of the laws of inheritance. Right? So we ask Allah Azza wa, this is just the introduction to give us what? The ability to act upon His commands, all of His commands. And we ask Allah Azza wa to give us the ability to refrain from that which is what? Prohibited. Right? Understand, sometimes we think that, listen, with regards to what? Riba, interest, right? People take it lightly, but it's one of what the most hideous crime. One of the most, khalas, a major sin in the Sharia. But khalas, we see what? Many people see it involves no what? No bloodshed, right? Nobody beating anybody. We do it in a closed office, right? We do it what? Very diplomatic. So what wrong in that? Inheritance also is the same thing, right? Inheritance is the same thing. A person what? You have papers, you have this, you have that, and khalas. It doesn't work like that, right? And many people what? They justify, right? They justify withholding that inheritance. That boy young, what are you going to do with that what? 5, 6 or $10 million? What are you going to do with that, right? He doesn't know how that came in the first place, and all this we justify. So we take about 10 million, and you know what? We take some and we give it to the masjid, we give it to the madrasa, we feed the poor, and we donate, and we think that is kafara. We think that the sin we did, these things would serve as what? Atonement. No. We can't steal money and give it in sadaqah. We can't steal money and give it to the poor. That is what? So inheritance is something very important that we learn, right? And that we apply. Why? Because it is what? It's not something that is, as we mentioned, it's not something that is mustahab or recommended, and if you want to do it, very good. No, it's an obligation. It's something mandatory. Right? So we're going straight into the inheritance here now. Right? What is inheritance? Right? In simple terms, what is inheritance? Inheritance is what? The automatic transfer of ownership after demise onto specific individuals in specific portions. Simple, right? Inheritance is what? The automatic transfer of ownership after the demise of the deceased, demise of that person, onto specific individuals, right? In specific portions. So sometimes I hear people say, you know what, I want to distribute my inheritance before I die, you know. Inheritance will only come into effect after death. The term inheritance and the laws regarding inheritance is what? After death. So if you take your wealth and you distribute it in your lifetime, that is not inheritance. A man, it is impossible for a living person to distribute inheritance. Why? Because the concept of inheritance would only arise after death. So whatever you give in your lifetime, you call it with a gift or a grant or whatever you want to call it, right? Inheritance is what? It only occurs after death. So in your lifetime, you can give to whomsoever you want, right? Any amount, you could do that, right? You don't have to share. You can share to anyone. You can give what? Zaid, Umar, Bakar, right? You can give your children. You can give people outside. You can, anything. That is your wealth. Understand? Your wealth, you have control over your wealth. But in the Sharia, when a person dies, that wealth is not his anymore. Understand? A person, when he dies, the moment he dies, his entire estate is transferred to the deceased. Afwan is transferred to what? The heirs of the deceased. The moment he dies, that is an automatic transfer. It doesn't belong to him anymore. It doesn't belong to him anymore. That is why the famous poet, he mentioned, قَدِّمْ لِنَفْسِكَ مَالًا أو مالك طيب وأنت مالك مالك خلاص وقدم لنفسك خيرا وأنت مالك مالك. You what? Do goodness with your wealth when you are the owner of it. Understand? When you die and what your children do and your grandchildren do, hey, they do it on your behalf. That is their wealth. They do it on your behalf. That no way equates what you do with your own wealth. And in your lifetime, you can do whatever you want with your wealth. Right? When we speak about inheritance, is what? That only occurs after what? Demise. And after demise, you have no control over that. Who's going to get it and how much they're going to get? No. That is a divine transfer. So when we speak about what? Inheritance, that is what? An automatic and divine transfer of ownership. Right? Ownership, we're speaking here about the ownership of the estate of the deceased. After death, onto what specific individuals and specific portion. Right? So we're going to speak about that automatic transfer. Understand? That automatic transfer is not dependent on any human being. No. If I give you what, $10,000 and I say, listen, take this $10,000 and give it to Zaid. Right? It's not for you to what? Sit down and think, I wonder if Zaid really need this money. I wonder if I should give Zaid this money. I wonder if Zaid really deserving of this money. I think he might just what? Go and smoke it out or drink it out. Or he might just... It's not for you. Why that money is for Zaid? All you have to do is what? Give it to Zaid. Right? You don't have the authority to what? To what? Evaluate that situation and to what? Investigate Zaid and see if he's deserving of it. No, that is his. Right? I didn't say, okay, this is your money, take it and what? See that if Zaid needs from it and need help him. I didn't. No, that money is Zaid one. Is Zaid's. Right? So this is inheritance. When a person dies, his estate is transferred to all of his heirs. So what is our role as living people? All we have to do is what? Physically distribute. We cannot say who going to get and how much they're going to get. That already decreed, that already decided. Right? That already decided. So the obligation upon the executors, the executors of the will is only to physically distribute the estate based on the laws of Sharia. Bas. Right? But he have plenty. This one don't have. That is not for you and I. No. That is not for you and I. You drive in, you're going down the road and you see one man living in a house. And he have what? He has 5 vehicles parked up. But he don't need all that. You're going to take 1, 2. That is not your right. If he has 5, 10, 20, that is his. Right? That is what he does with that is his. That is his property. Alright? And in doing that, there should be what? No unnecessary delay in the distribution of the estate. Understand here? We need to understand this part carefully. We're not saying, okay, we bury the man today and what? Distribute tomorrow. No, khalas. You need to it will take time. First of all, you have the legal part of it. And secondly, listen, you have to see exactly what comprises the estate. Right? In your lifetime, you may not know all that this man possesses. Hey, this man had what? A bank account here too. He owned this by here. So you need to what? Investigate and see that what? Everything that what comprises of the estate, that will take a lot of time. Right? The money that he lent people also, that is part of the estate. That is part of the estate. So this, you hear people say it, but the man now dead. Right? And this is going to haunt people in the end. Right? The man now dead, give it, it's money you want, and it's not, understand, it's not money, right? But look at most of the cases, when the estate is not distributed, months pass, a year pass, what happens? Hey, they ownership already, they think it's theirs, right? So everybody sad and grief for the janazah and 3 days and the 40 days and all that. After that, enmity. Why? I want my share. No, but if you have that so long, you don't want to let it go. Right? So it's not being greedy over here. No, listen, if I give you my vehicle to use because I'm going away for a couple months, and you use that with this and everything you do, your work and everything, and that connected to, and I come back now, and you don't make your program already, you know how you're going to work and dropping the children and this and that with my vehicle, and I come and you don't want to give me my vehicle, but that is mine, right? That is mine. So this is what happens, right? When the estate is not distributed immediately, right? When you say immediately, but without any unnecessary delay, right? Then khalas, as you mentioned, the day for janazah, 3 days, 40 days, everybody comforted and consoling each other and this and that. And after that, everybody turn enemy. Why? Because he wants what I have. It's not what you have, it's what belongs to him. Right? So the whole thing about is not being greedy for wealth, there's a rights and justice. Right? If I pack up my vehicle in your yard for a few days, right? It doesn't the ownership doesn't transfer to you, it still belongs to me. Right? So I'm thinking about whenever I ask him from a vehicle, what he gonna say, or what he gonna think, but that is mine. And it's the same concept in inheritance. Allah Azza wa Jal gave that person, he transferred that wealth to that individual. So how you mean what? That is his. So it's not being greedy for wealth, that is your haq, that is your right. And most of the time, you look and you see, right? The older folks would know, right? Look and see, anytime estate not distributed within that first year, it's not going to happen again, right? They don't planning to do what? What are you going to do with this? What are you going to do that? And you're going to get illegal documents and this and that and whatever, and to secure that that stolen, confiscated asset. So we're going to speak about the estate here now. The estate, what is the estate of the deceased? The estate of the deceased, it refers to every single thing that person owned until his last breath. That is the estate. The man will leave nothing. What do you mean the man will leave nothing? So he didn't own clothes, he didn't have on clothes, he never he was to walk barefoot, he don't have shoes. Listen, every single thing that was in the ownership of that individual until the angel of death took his soul, that is the estate. Right? That is the estate, and you can add to this list. This includes cash, shares, jewelry, ornaments, furniture, appliance, clothes, receivable debts, livestock, poultry, agricultural products, raw material, goods in production, finished goods, goods in inventory, land, house, building, factory, shop, income, pin, right? Whether the man own a pin factory or a pin, all of that is inheritance, right? So the man leave house and land behind, and he died. The man leave nothing. Why? You think inheritance is cash? Inheritance is gold and silver and money. Every single thing that person owns, right? If I ask, okay, who water is it? This is my, Angela gives me, right? This is my water, right? I own this. Right? This is mine, right? Who topias? This is mine. Somebody asks who topias is it? You go say, that is yours. It belongs to you. So that is your ownership. So whatever is in the ownership of a person until his last breath, that is the estate. Being part of the estate is connected to the rights of others, right? And then listen. This is something, if you look at our Salaf as-Salih, our pious predecessors, right? A woman, she was kneading dough. She was kneading dough to make a roti or bread. And the news of the death of her husband, right, came to her while she was kneading dough, right? And she stopped. She stopped. Nahnu shuraka fi. She stopped. Why? Because listen, this dough, they are shareholders in this dough now. What do you mean? Yes, this dough, the flour, it belonged to the husband. And yes, we are given preference to use it, right? He bought it, that is his wealth, right? And he bought it to be used to make roti for the family, or bread for the family. It belongs to him, right? But now he died. This is his property. It belongs to all of his heirs now, not only us. So not only us, we are the heirs of that deceased. He has a mother, he has a father also. So we cannot just take this for ourselves. No, this is connected to the rights of all these people. A person was sick, and he had this lantern or this flambeau he used to long ago, right? Or this light that used to burn with oil or whatever. People used to visit, they'd benefit from the light and this and that. The person died. The moment he died, someone took off the light. Inna lillahi, you take all the light. Every time we come on the light, we benefited from the light. The man, you take out the light now. He said yes. Right? When he was alive, that light was his, the oil was his, and this was the general consent he gave. Now he died, that light, this is it becomes part of the estate. And all of the heirs now, they have rights to that. So we cannot use it how we feel to use it. It doesn't solely belong to us. Right? And sometimes when you see when a person die, right, the wife, they share this and share. You not the only heir. You could share what belonged to you, right? But what about the children and the other people, right? You didn't seek their consent. So how you could just share out and come in the house of the deceased and the groceries? Okay, we cook from here, we make coffee, and that belongs to all these people. We can't just go to somebody listen, this one just come in the house and go in the cupboard and take all this and where you going? One more he boy? So it's the same concept, but it's just strange to us. It doesn't, it is now mushtarak. There's shareholders in it. And most people they might even be a shareholder. When I say a shareholder, you need an heir. But they're utilizing this and using that and subhanallah. So this is very important inheritance is, and understanding the laws of inheritance. Right? So we mentioned the transfer of ownership. We need to understand the concept of ownership. The concept of ownership. So ownership. Understand ownership. Ownership. When we speak about the transfer of ownership, what determines ownership is what constitutes the estate. What determines what is part of the estate, right? A person would understand. Simple things we take for granted, right? Only those items owned by the deceased, it would constitute the estate. Right? We know that. So things that he borrowed, right? He borrowed this, he borrowed that. That is not part of the estate. It needs to be returned, right? Yes, you need to return it. Return all these things. With regards to ownership, there are certain things that and you'll see how surprising this is. There are certain things we understand is the exclusive ownership, right? If I ask, who owns the vehicle? Yeah, that is my vehicle. Who owns the phone? That is my phone. There are certain things that there's no ambiguity in it, right? This belonged to the deceased, right? So there's exclusive, undisputed ownership, right? So that is easy. Whether it be what, something expensive, cheap, it doesn't matter. But this is at least what? This is the easy part, right? To determine, okay, what comprises the estate of the ownership or estate of the deceased. So there are things that person, what? He owns by himself. And there are certain things also that are clear, except for the ownership is joint ownership, right? The deceased and a person, what? They jointly own a land, piece of land, a property, right? That is okay. Both of their names on a bank account, okay, no problem. What would constitute the estate is what? That portion only, right? The deceased own a property with what? A person 50-50. So that person, what, he died now, so his percentage, his ownership in the ratio that 50% of that property would constitute the estate and not the other part, because this is what he owned, right? This is what he owned. As for the co-owner, you have, it's going to skip something over here now. We go to an important point, right, with ownership. You have what? This concept of what? Joint tenancy, right? And tenancy in common. Joint tenancy, you have the state law, the law of the land. What does that state, right? The law of the land is that you have 2-3 people owning a property in joint tenancy. So the law of the land states that if one person were to die, right, one person were to die, that property would pass on to the other what, co-owners. So Zaid and Umar, both of them what, own a property in joint tenancy. Zaid dies, right, Zaid happened to die. According to the law of the land, that property will now be in the sole ownership of the other party, Umar. Right? 3 people, Zaid, Umar, Bakr. Zaid dies, then what? Zaid owns 3.3%. Right? Now that property will belong to Bakr and Umar 50%. Right? It doesn't go to the heirs of the deceased. That is what the law of the land. Right? The Islamic law is what? Opposite to that. Yeah. This was in the property, the ownership of Zaid. So if Zaid dies now, it will go to what? The surviving heirs of Zaid. Right? But Bakr and what? Bakr and Umar, we have papers, you know. Papers do nothing. That is stealing wealth. So even though you could go to the court and what? And justify that. Even though what? You have your man papers to prove that. That doesn't what? Transfer ownership. That 33.3%, it will go to what? The heirs of Zaid. So change it. That is what is whole thing. What? Joint tenancy in common. That is more applicable to laws of the Sharia. Alright? So as I mentioned, many people they have the concept, whatever what? They have in the court to justify what they have. No, it doesn't work like that. Alright? So now you have some disputed what? Ownership. Alright? Disputed ownership, there are certain what? The ownership of certain items may not be clear. Understand? If it's not clear in your lifetime, it will not be clear after you die. Who own that? Right? So now you have what? Things in the house. Alright? Yes, the husband will purchase it. But when the husband purchases it now, he don't come and say, hey, this is my fridge, you know. He don't say that. This is my air conditioner. This is my couch set. He don't do that. He would purchase it and then bring it in the house and everybody would benefit from it. Right? But the question is, who does it belong to? Right? There's nothing over here that it don't have an owner. Right? But there's something, who it belong to over here, no? Right? But somebody come and thief the couch now, then okay, the thief my couch, what do you mean? Before you never had an owner? You mean what? Somebody must own it. So even the husband say, listen, he won't say this, hey, this is my couch. He would never say that, right? I don't think a man would say that, right? But he could say, listen, honey, this is yours. I buy this for you. So if he mentions that, khalas, with a gift, the property or the ownership will transfer to the recipient, right? There are a few ways in which what ownership is transferred. Ownership can be transferred by purchasing, or by gifting, by inheritance, and like that. So, There are things in the house, the furniture, the appliances, the books, the wares, this and that, even the groceries. A man don't buy groceries and put in the way, see this? It's my groceries. No, he don't do that, but it belongs to who? Right? Khalas, it belongs to the man. Unless he specifies otherwise. Right? Unless he specifies otherwise. So, understand, this concept of ownership is very important. Right? Why? Because if it belongs to the deceased, it constitutes the estate. If it constitutes the estate, it connected to the rights of all the heirs. Right? They don't want to take something that belongs to the what? To the deceased, in the sense that what? It is part of the estate, and it is part of the estate, and other people, what they have rights to. We don't know what? They take their rights. Understand? So these things need to be what? Sorted out. So important question. Right? And everybody asks themselves this question. Right? Ask yourself this question when you go home too. Right? What exactly do I own? What exactly do I own? Right? Sometimes that causes a little problem between husband and wife too. Right? Ask yourself, what exactly do I own? If I were to die, what would be my estate? What things would comprise of my estate? My estate would consist of what? What items? Right? You yourself would have doubt. I wonder if I tell she I gave her the fridge boy, or the fridge is I wonder boy. So you yourself would have doubt. So you need to sort it out. Right? So if I were to die, what would be my estate? Would my heirs dispute regarding my estate? Obviously, if you don't know what you own to, right? You don't know the heirs in your lifetime, don't know them when you pass away. Then my father, he gave me that. I asked that. So these things just sort out, right? What you own, right? And think about it. Do I have a document that would clarify my ownership? For example, listen. You have a piece of land here. You have a bank account there. You have property, right? You have a document that will, okay, when you die, that my heirs could look at this and okay, my ownership is clear over here what I own. Because if you have a piece of land somewhere, what, acres of land somewhere, nobody don't know, right? And you die, now that connected to your heirs. But if your heirs don't know about these things, they would be deprived of that inheritance, right? We have any document to show what? Of the clarify ownership? No, because nobody think they're going to die. No, I'm not going to die. No, I have this to do and that to do. Nobody going to die. That's what we think, right? So listen, ask yourself again, the furniture at home, the appliance, the car, the house, the books, the computer, the bank balance. Who owns that, right? And listen, if it's what? In partnership between you and your wife, okay, good. Alright? If it's partnership between you and you, then how much then? And you think about it, the wife probably know. Her name on your bank account, right? But listen, a person's name on a bank account doesn't necessarily what show ownership. Her name on the account because she's privileged to what, take how much she wants or what, do transaction on my behalf, but the question is she the owner of the account? Then I clear your throat. I don't think so. I don't think I made her the owner of the account. You know, but her name over there, she's privileged, being my wife, to access my funds and to spend, and she has that privilege, right? But is she the owner of the account? Right? So I don't know how much ladies we have here, but listen, that is important questions. And if she is what, a part owner of the account, what percentage? No, we just put money over there and we use it. It don't work like that. Right? What percentage? Is it a 50-50? 60-40? Or none? 100? It belongs to me, but you know, she can use it. No restrictions. So we have to clarify that. Understand, this is not only connected to what inheritance, this is connected to what? Your zakah, this connected to your qurbani, this connected to your hajj. All of these what monetary obligations in Sharia, this concept of what ownership comes in. Right? How you know qurbani obligatory upon you? How do you have to pay zakah? Khalas, ownership. Right? Ownership. So if you what a part owner, then okay, how much is your share? How much is her share? Understand, names and what? And documents and bank account, as we mentioned, does not necessarily show ownership, right? And understand the ambiguity in all these things over here, right? It would lead, understand here, it would lead to dispute in the distribution of the estate, right? So time to distribute the estate, well, no, Daddy, give me that is mine. And all these we have no proof and evidence for that, right? How you could, so all these things need to be clarified, understand here? We mentioned, listen, if you want that your family unit remain after you die, you sort it out while you're living, right? Because one of the biggest problems we have in our society is what is inheritance. That is mine, this is mine, and everybody fighting afterwards. Brothers not speaking to the other, this one not speaking to the other. Why? Because of what? Inheritance. And we think we in the grave now, we think we in Barzakh and they're making dua for us. How my father so? Why he do this for? They're not khalas. We want that when we die, the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, waladun salih yad'u lahu. He leaves behind what? A pious child that would make dua for him. But how my father could do that? Khalas. This what we, so listen, be frank, right? This is what? This is how it is, and make it clear. So it prevent plenty dispute that could arise, or that will arise. Right? So understand your ownership is what? Of paramount importance. Right? And calculating what? Your zakah, your khalas, inheritance, all these things. Right? So what is the solution? Right? What is the solution? Understand here? The solution is not go to man and say, honey, you know what? Whatever I want is yours. That is not the solution. Right? No. The solution is not transferring ownership. Right? The solution is what? Identifying ownership. Right? I don't think, okay, a wife should be what? I don't know, upset if the husband says, listen, this is mine, but listen, you be my wife, you are privileged to what? To use, right? I don't know, right? I don't know. But now if you flip it, right? We have like plenty of examples and we want to go into this over here, right? So a man say, you know what? So the woman, the wife would come genuinely, so listen, so nothing is mine. So when you die, no, I have nothing. So the husband now listen. Right? Okay, all the property is yours, this is yours. I know for whatever reason for whatever reason, the wife does feel that the husband want to die first. So when you die, what happened to me? All the time as the question, when you die, why, what happened to me? Why would go on this and that? Like the shortest said, you would have dead before me. I know that. Right? So understand here, listen. You can put things in place, yes, 50-50 could work, this and that, but this happening, what is reality? Right? To transfer everything. So you transfer everything now, you look at the flip side of that transfer, so you go home, you know what? Transfer the house is yours, the furniture is yours, everything is yours, right? Everything is yours. So what now if the wife dies first? Listen, if everything is hers, right, and she dies first, then all of that becomes her estate. And you being the husband, all you're entitled is what? 1/4, 1/2 of the estate. So you'd be sharing the same house with your mother-in-law and your father-in-law, because that would be her heirs. Right? That would be her heirs. So the same house that you give all is yours, right? The whole house is yours, all my property is yours, the whole bank account is yours, and you die now, she dies now, then what? From her heirs are what? A mother, a father, and so forth, right? And yes, you are heir too, right? So you would get your portion, right? So So you have a portion of your house now, right? What if, listen, reality, look at reality. What if the marriage comes to an end? Divorce occurs, right? So who moving out? Huh? No, listen, who moving out? You can't tell her, listen, you have to pack up and go, right? Yes, and somebody else will come in your house. I mean, this is reality. Alright? Listen, if you give it to her, alright, this part I doesn't get when they're teaching you online class, I see the faces, right? The expression. But listen, if you give it to her, it belongs to her. Understand? You don't have to make all this document in Sharia. Khalas, that mere gifted, verbal gifted, right? That is what enough to transfer what ownership. So you give it to her, right? And now she decides, you know what? That is her property. She decides, you know what? I'm going to sell this house. What do you mean you're going to sell this house? That's her house. I'm going to rent out this house and move to the next place. But that is hers. You understand? I'm going to give it to somebody. What do you mean? That is hers. She can do whatever she wants with it. Understand? One is the owner of something. Whatever you can do whatever you want, right? And the wife said, listen, you give it too much trouble. Come out of here. That is her house. That's her property, right? So as we mentioned, the whole thing about it is not what? Transferring ownership, right? Identifying ownership, yes, and put things in place that that person what? A surviving spouse could benefit to a certain extent, right? But don't be any. Look at reality, right? Look at reality. I know a person by us, right? It happened to many people in their lifetime. What? They distribute their property, thinking it's something what? Holy and sick. Not holy in that. They distribute the property while you're living. Benefit from your property. Yes, and you have extras. Yes, no problem. But do the house that you live in, give it to your what? Your son. The land that you own, give it to your what? Your children. And then what? You living in somebody else's property. So you want to do something with your house now, so ask your son. He had to ask your wife. The wife said no, the son said no. You don't have to do that, right? There's nothing what's sacred and holy in a person distributing all of his property in his lifetime. No. I think what? A good place to stop it. Right? So khalas, the whole thing about here, identify ownership, right? Identify ownership, that is the most important thing. I mean, the issue of what? I mean, it's very uncomfortable to get for a person to go, transfer all of his what? If you really love me, you would transfer. What kind of love is that? That blackmailing, right? If you really love me, you would what? Put the house in my name. You'd put the car in my name. You'd put the bank account in my name. No, I don't think there's But they need to strike that balance, and each couple they need to sort out their own affairs and their business. Right? Bas jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Next week inshallah we'll continue.